Hi, welcome to Audio Punch. Chris Henry here, and if you're interested in starting your own podcast, maybe for the first time, then you've probably already realized that you're going to need some software. You're going to need a program to edit the audio that you get, if not also record it. And if you're a Mac user, you're in luck because Garageband is a free audio editing program that comes with every MacBook, iMac, Mac Pro, whatever you get. So you can skip Audacity, you can skip even paying money. You already paid a bunch of money for your MacBook. Just use GarageBand. So today I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up GarageBand to record and edit your podcast. So GarageBand should come pre-installed on most systems, but if it's not, just head to the App Store, search for GarageBand, one word, and install it from there. It's not going to cost you anything. Once it's installed, open it up. It might have to download some additional software in order to get started if you didn't already have it installed, but I'm, again, pretty sure it should just be there. When you open it up, this is the first window you see. New project. What kind of project do you want to make? Now, it's got a bunch of stuff here. For our purposes, we're going to select voice to get started. Now, in the description below, there's a link where you can download my template that I've made for podcast editing in GarageBand. So if you're going to use GarageBand, just download that template, all pre-built for you. But for now, I'm going to show you how to do it yourself. Click voice, and GarageBand has pre-prepped for us here are 5 different vocal tracks. And you can see this meter popping off here. It's already found my system default audio interface, which is the same one I'm using to record this video right now. And you can see that it's seeing audio from my microphone and only from my microphone. If I stop talking, those meters go down. So right now I could click this, hit record, and we are already off to the races recording a podcast right now. And you can hit spacebar to stop your recording, and you can hit enter to go back to the beginning, record, and we are already off to the races recording a podcast right now. You have just started recording a podcast in GarageBand. You're basically ready to go. Now, if you have an external audio interface, then you might have to come up here to GarageBand, go to Preferences, click on Audio MIDI, and you might have to come in here to Output Device, select your output device and your preferred audio input device. Now, by default, it's just going to pick whatever is selected in the sound preferences in your system settings. So if you have that set to the same thing you're going to record and edit through, then you don't have to do this. Something else to pay attention to for later, this little check mark, enable audio units. That means, are we going to allow GarageBand to use external plugins to our recorded audio? And you want to leave that checked because yes, of course you do. You might not now. If you're new to this and you're seeing all of these buttons and you don't know what any of it does, it can be a little overwhelming, but I promise you, we're going to work together and eventually you're going to know how to do all this stuff. So we're going to leave this as is for now. No special settings, just vanilla GarageBand. So we've recorded this audio, and GarageBand, because we picked this voice preset, it has preset effects here. And you'll notice that when I click on a track, it automatically switches that track. So if I record something like this, for instance, we'll get rid of this, go back to the beginning, we'll click this track and record. Hey, Chris, how's it going? All right, cool. Glad to hear it. Awesome. Well, we recorded that audio. Now I can come down to this track, go back to the beginning by hitting return. If I hit record again, check out what happens. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Hey, not bad, not bad. All right, cool. Glad to hear it. Awesome. We've just recorded on 2 separate tracks from the same microphone, which you can start to see where this is going if you have multiple microphones, an audio interface that will let you record more than one microphone at a time. You could record both of these tracks at the same time, but with different audio inputs. Now, multi-track editing might seem a little daunting at first, but I promise you it is worth the effort it takes to get used to it, because if you record everyone on the same track through multiple microphones or the same microphone, what you're going to find is that editing becomes problematic. If someone coughs, you can't edit out that cough without editing out everything else that was happening at the same time. Now, if I click this button here, the little headphones, it's going to solo the track. So it won't play both tracks. It's only going to play this track. Click up here at the top to move the playhead around.
Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Hey, not bad, not bad.
All right.
You can hear how, because I'm just playing this audio out through my speakers, my microphone picked up this unwanted audio, but check it out. I can come over here, see what happens when I hover over the bottom corner. I can click that, drag it over, do the same thing here, drag it over. And now, hey, not bad, not bad. You can hear I was able to edit out the part that I don't like. You can probably also hear how this voice on this track sounds different than this one. Hey, Chris, how's it going? And the reason for that is this has different effects on it, which is something that you can go pretty deep down a rabbit hole. And so all I'm going to recommend right now is that if you start with this voice template, I don't recommend messing with the tracks that they have in place right now, because if you wanted to try to get this track to sound like this track, you're going to have to come down here into the bottom, twirl down this plugins menu. You're going to have to know what all of these different things do: compressor, EQ, exciter, de-esser, another EQ. It's complicated and we don't need any of it. So what you can do here is click on this narration vocal, which had a nice beefy sound to it, perfect for a podcast. Just click this and hit Command D to duplicate it as many times as you need for the different audio tracks you're going to use. So I'm going to move this one up here, and now you can hear they're both going to sound pretty similar. Hey, Chris, how's it going? Hey, not bad, not bad. All right, cool, glad to hear it. Oh, having a conversation with myself, right? And so that's why multi-track editing is nice. Now, there are tools for, if you right-click here, you can split at playhead. That's what you want to do. Or hit Command T. And now I can select that and just delete it. And you can edit the length there. And so now you don't have to do this, but you could go through and delete all of the mic bleed and stuff. But that's not really a good workflow, but you can see the possibilities. Now, that's how to record single tracks in GarageBand. If you want to delete tracks, just click on the blank spot of the track and hit the delete key. And we're going to get rid of all of those because we're not going to use them for this. Now, let's say we've got our audio recorded here, our single track. We were just talking about movies, right? We went and saw whatever the latest edition of Mission Impossible is, and we're going to review it. So we have our beginning there, but what we want to have is some music underneath that to give it some polish, to show our audience that, like, we're putting some work into this, more than just hitting record and then publishing whatever happened afterwards, right? So how do you get audio into GarageBand? First thing you're going to want to do is navigate to the Finder and find the folder that has your music in it, like that. Now, I have been editing and mixing and producing podcasts for like 5 years now. So I have a whole bunch of music already that I've gotten from various sound libraries I subscribe to, etc. If you don't have any of this, the only thing you need to be careful of is that the music you use or sound effects that you use are legal for you to play on your podcast. You got to make sure you have a license for them. Now, that doesn't have to be crazy complicated. In fact, there's a website you can go to called freesound.org that just has free sound effects. There are cheap ones. Audioblocks.com is like $100 a year for unlimited royalty-free downloads. Wherever you get your music, though, just make sure that you have a license to play it on a podcast. If you make your own music, you don't have to worry about it because you can do whatever you want. So I have some, let's see here. That's not bad. That sounds like something we could do a little bit of editing over. So real quick, just for fun, let's record some new audio here. So we have that podcast intro, and now we want to put music behind it. I have this cool acoustic guitar track that I found. You know, all you have to do to get an audio track into GarageBand is click and drag into the GarageBand window, and it will automatically make a new track. or you can drop it in a track that already exists. You can do either one. Look at that. Brand new track. Now we're going to get rid of this narration vocal that doesn't have any audio on it because we're not using it, and cleanliness is helpful here. So now we go back to the beginning. Check this out. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Chris Talks About Movies No One Else Has Seen. So that sounds a little bit loud, and you want people to be able to hear you talking over your music. The music is not there to distract, it's there to enhance, right? So the easiest way to do that is just to grab this little slider here, and that's going to turn the track volume down a little bit. Now, there are more complicated ways you can do this so that the music is loud when no one's talking and quiet when people are talking, and we'll get to that in another video. That's called ducking, if you want to look it up yourself. And now let's listen. Hey friends, welcome to another episode of Chris Talks About Movies No One Else Has Seen, like Mission Impossible 732 from the year 2557. That's a little easier to hear. Now, we don't want the music to play through the entire episode, right? So how do we cut this down? Well, it's the same as how we did that editing of the vocals before. You come over here, you move the playhead by clicking and dragging up here to where you want the music. You think you want the music to be faded out already by, say, here, right? Select the music, hit Command T for split at playhead, and then you can delete the end. Now, we don't just want the music to cut off. That's harsh. We want to fade it out into the content of the episode where we talk about Mission Impossible 732. So the way to do that is with what's called volume automation, or a volume envelope, sometimes you'll hear it called. And you access that by pushing the A button. And now it kind of grays out the audio, fades the tracks into the background, but you can see these gray lines in the middle. What those lines represent is the current volume of the track. You can see if I turn this down, that line moves. Now I want to put that back up to 0, which means it's not being boosted, but it's not being turned down either. Make sure that volume is selected here, because what we're about to do, you can do to any parameter, and it will automatically turn it down or pan it to the left or turn it up or increase a value or decrease a value. It's a very powerful tool, but all we're going to use it for is a fade. So we're going to make 2 clicks here. One, we're going to click where we want the fade out to start, and then we're going to click where we want the fade out to end. And I recommend ending the fade out just before the end of your audio region so you don't get any weird clipping at the end. And then you just drag this dot down. Now, I want you to watch this volume slider as the playhead moves along this line. Mission Impossible 732 from the year 2557. You can see it's turning it down automatically. Now, let's say we wanted that music to keep playing underneath the next little bit, but be a little bit quieter. We can drag this region out much further, and we don't have to turn this down all the way. In fact, we can turn this down to just a little bit. And let's say we want it to be a little more gradual. We want it to turn down fast for a little bit and then a little bit slower for a much longer period. You can add another point and drag it like that. Anytime there's a point, you can change the value and it will automatically move between the previous point and that point. If you've done animation, this is a lot like keyframes. Now, if you want to remove a point, simply select it by clicking the point and then hit delete. Point's gone. So now what we'll have is it'll turn down just a little. And now it's going to ride at this volume until I tell it not to. So that's how you can do fades or automatic volume on your music tracks, sound effects. You can do it on your voice too. If I thought I got a little bit loud at this point, but just at this point, I could add 2 points and drop a third, and it'll automatically turn it down, like Mission Impossible 732. So you can use that to get rid of pops and clicks and unwanted coughs and things like that. It's handier than deleting sometimes. So those are the basics of getting GarageBand set up to record and edit your podcasts, how to bring new audio in, and how to automate the volume of that to fade out music or fade in music as you so desire. Now, one other thing you might be curious to know is that if you have an audio interface that accepts multiple mic inputs, GarageBand can also record multiple tracks at the same time. So if you and I are recording a follow-up episode to the Mission Impossible 736, where we discuss the prequel Mission Impossible, holy crap, we're still doing this, aren't we? And we can both record on separate tracks at the same time, which will make editing easier. It'll make the end result sound better than if we both recorded to the same track, whether through a mixer or a single microphone. And in GarageBand, it's pretty easy to do. The first thing you need to do, however, is get GarageBand ready for multi-track recording, which you do by right-clicking on one of your narration vocal tracks, which we'll just use because out of this voice template for a built-in preset, this sounds pretty great. You need to come down here to Configure Track Header, click on that, and you want to put a check mark next to Record Enable. Now you can see these little red buttons. Now if I click one, it starts blinking red, and now what that means is this top track is in a state that's called armed. It means when I hit record, no matter what track I have selected, it's going to record to that track. So even if I have this track selected, I hit record, you'll notice it's recording to the track that I had armed. Now, if I come down here and arm this track, you'll notice the top one isn't armed anymore. Okay, so the reason for that is because if you come down and look here in the bottom corner, they both have the same input. Channel 1. You can't record two tracks from channel 1 at the same time. What you need to do is make sure, let's say you have an audio interface, a Focusrite 2i2. It's a relatively affordable 2-channel audio interface that just plugs in via USB. It's worth having if you've got the cash. So on that, we would have channel 1, channel 2. Now on my Orion 32, I've got 32 channels if I want, because I need this for work, and so I end up having a really nice audio interface to use even for personal projects. So what you want to make sure you do is on track 1, for instance, input 1 is selected. Track 2, plug your microphone into input 2 on your audio interface. Track 2 has input 2. Now the numbers don't have to match, but I find that easier to keep track of. Now, when I click arm, now you'll see both tracks are armed. Now I don't have a microphone plugged into input 2. I have a bass guitar that I won't subject you to, but you will see now, if I come back to the beginning and hit record, it records on both tracks. So you'll see me coming in here on track 1 because I have track 1 set to input 1. If we had you plugged into track 2, then you'd be coming in on input 2, and at the end of the day, then your voice would be here on the second track, mine would be on the first, and you'd be able to edit the podcast from there. Now, in order to prevent your audio from slipping as you edit, the only thing you have to keep track of is you want to select all of the tracks when you move them. So let's say you said something objectionable here, and I cut it out. So what I might do is cut it out, and because then there's going to be a gap, I'm going to want to move everything on that side this way. You want to be sure to select everything. Cut it out together and move them together. It's not the end of the world if it gets a little misaligned, but it can be kind of a headache if you forget to do that. So one thing to keep in mind is if you are going to edit, cutting out mistakes or cutting time where you had to look up some notes or something like that, just make sure that if you are doing a multi-track edit like this, when you move one thing earlier, you move both things. Otherwise, you'll find that you get like weird echoes between one track and another, because even if you're recording on two separate tracks, if both people are in the same room at the same time, your voice will be in my microphone just a little and mine will be in yours just a little, and you don't want those to get misaligned because then it starts to sound real weird. But the benefits still far outweigh the costs, and then we're pretty much done. And because of the fact that GarageBand kind of comes with these pre-built effects chains that you can use, you don't have to worry about what they are or how to use them, you can just kind of use this narration vocal preset or use the Audio Punch podcast editing preset from the link below. And you don't have to do any of the mixing and mastering and audio engineering stuff. But when you're done, you need to get this audio out of GarageBand in order to have an MP3 that you can upload to Libsyn or Podbean or wherever it is that you host your podcast. So what you do is this top bar you see here with the numbers and this gray area, if you click that or hit C to toggle it on and off, select the end here and drag it until, a second or two after the very end of your episode. And what that will do is it will dictate the boundaries of what is to be shared when you mix this down. And the reason I say share is because that's what GarageBand calls it. You'll come up here to the top, click the share menu. Don't share it to iTunes. Don't share it to a media browser or SoundCloud. You might do that. If your podcast is set up to SoundCloud, you could just do that. I don't recommend it though, because you want to have a backup on your computer just in case something happens. So you come down here to export song to disk. This window pops up with some options. And the first thing you want to do is name your file. Now there's two ways you could do it. What I recommend is coming up with a short little 3-letter abbreviation for your show. So Audio Punch _ and then either the episode number or the date or both. So we can say this is episode 1, and then maybe we can put the title, Missions Impossible. Whatever you have to do in order to keep your episodes organized and easy to find is what I recommend you do. So this is one way to do it. Find what works for you and stick to it. The next thing you want to do is pick a file format. Now, if we're making podcasts, MP3 is your friend, and you can pick high quality is fine. However, spoken word doesn't suffer very much from extra compression, and a lot of podcast hosting services have fee structures based on the amount you upload every month. And with MP3s, depending on the quality, it's about 1 megabyte per minute. So if you're releasing hour-long episodes, that's 60 minutes. You could easily hit a 250 megabyte limit really quick. So tricks to get around that are namely just compress it more and it'll still sound good. So we'll go to medium quality, and then you want to be sure to click export cycle area, because that's what that yellow bar is that we dragged across the length of our episode here. It's going to export only what's inside there. So that way you can control what gets exported and what doesn't. And then we'll hit export. That didn't take very long because it was literally 10 seconds of audio. If you've got an hour-long podcast, that might take a few minutes to do. Don't worry, just wait till it's done. So you can go to where you saved your file, find your episode, select it, hit spacebar maybe to preview. It records on both tracks. Hey, it worked. First episode, 16 seconds long. I recommend making your podcast episodes longer, but you do whatever feels good, whatever you think your potential audience might like, and have some fun. If you found this video helpful, if you liked it, please, hit that button down there, or don't. Click subscribe to get alerts for videos as they come out, and leave questions in the comments. I'll do my best to answer as many as I can, and some of them will probably give me good ideas for future videos. In the meantime, get your podcast started. We'll see you next time.